As the United States government shutdown stretches into what is now the longest in American history, the Trump regime announced today that it would provide partial relief to recipients of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The move came as growing uncertainty surrounded nearly 42 million Americans who depend on the program to buy food and were expecting that support today. The Department of Agriculture said that it would use contingency funds to continue SNAP operations, though recipients will only receive about half their usual monthly benefits. The announcement followed a federal court order requiring the regime to find a legal way to distribute emergency funds, despite earlier claims that such action would be unlawful. But for Trump, the cruelty is the point. He has seized on the government shutdown as an opportunity to reshape the government and punish detractors by firing more federal workers en masse and making irreversible cuts to social programs and infrastructure, specifically in Democratic states. Trump is literally trying to reduce the gene pool of the poor by smoking them out. The regime's decision was revealed in a court filing at the U.S. District Court in Rhode Island shortly after Trump said he would comply with the judge's directive. On Friday, he wrote on his Truth Social account that it would be his honor to provide funding if the courts clarified how it could be done within the law. I have instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible, Trump posted. If we are given the appropriate legal direction by the court, it will be my honor to provide the funding. With no irony at all. Judge John McConnell, who issued the ruling last week, ordered the regime to begin releasing contingency funds by midday today. The administration had previously maintained that these funds could only be used for emergencies such as natural disasters, a stance the judge dismissed as arbitrary. The court greatly appreciates the president's quick and definitive response to this court's order and his desire to provide the necessary SNAP funding, McConnell wrote in his follow-up order. The government shutdown, now in its 34th day, began on October 1st after lawmakers failed to reach a compromise on spending legislation. Republicans in Congress have demanded a long-term funding bill that includes provisions to extend certain tax cuts and cover costs through November 21st. Senate Democrats have resisted, insisting that any deal maintain Affordable Care Act subsidies that lower health insurance premiums that are likely to rise by 100% or more by January. With no agreement in sight, essential programs have been left scrambling for funds. The USDA's budget for SNAP officially ran out on Saturday, leaving millions unsure as to how they would afford groceries this month. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the department was working to reroute money legally, though it could take several days for states to distribute the emergency benefits. There is a process that has to be followed, Bessent said. We've got to figure out what the process is. They've had months to figure this out. They have no desire to reopen the government, not least pay SNAP benefits. Some state governments, anticipating disruptions, began taking emergency measures of their own. New York, Oregon, and Virginia declared states of emergency last week to provide temporary relief for low-income residents. Yet those state-funded supplements cover only a fraction of the roughly $8 billion the federal government spends each month on SNAP nationwide. Across the country, food insecurity is spiking. Long lines have formed outside food banks, with some regions turning stadium parking lots into distribution centres to handle surging demand. Many recipients say they fear the partial payments won't stretch far enough to feed their families. Many SNAP users described feeling desperate and powerless. A significant portion of those affected are elderly or disabled, living on fixed incomes and unable to work due to health conditions. For them, even a short delay or a 50% reduction in benefits could mean skipping meals or choosing between food and medication. Exactly what the Trump regime wants. The regime's handling of the crisis has drawn sharp criticism, both from political opponents and the public. The ongoing legal dispute centers on whether the USDA has the authority to use its contingency fund during a lapse in federal appropriations. Trump initially claimed it did not, saying the law restricted such spending to disaster relief efforts. However, 24 states sued, arguing that denying benefits during a shutdown would violate both statutory obligations and basic humanitarian standards. Judge McConnell agreed with the plaintiffs, ruling that the government could not suspend SNAP simply because Congress failed to pass a budget. His order compelled the administration to act immediately to ensure that benefits continued, at least in part, while the shutdown persisted. While the partial funding provides some temporary relief, it remains uncertain how long the USDA can sustain even reduced payments. Treasury officials have acknowledged that contingency funds are limited and may only last a few weeks if the shutdown continues. Without a broader spending agreement, additional cuts or delays could occur in December. The prospect of further instability, despite Trump's boasts of $22 trillion in investment in the United States, has fueled frustration among both aid recipients and state officials. This crisis was entirely avoidable, said Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. Millions of families are being caught in the middle of a political fight they had nothing to do with. As federal agencies continue to operate on emergency reserves, the shutdown's human cost is becoming increasingly apparent. For the 42 million Americans who depend on SNAP, the question is no longer whether their benefits will shrink, but how much longer they can hold on before the system runs dry. The broader political implications of the shutdown are also weighing heavily on the Trump regime. A recent NBC News poll found that 52% of Americans blamed Trump and his allies for the government shutdown, compared with 42% who held Democrats responsible. The prolonged standoff has taken a toll on the president's approval ratings. According to a CNN SSRS survey conducted from October 27th to 30th, Trump's approval rating has fallen to 37%, one of the lowest points of his presidency. His disapproval stands at 63%, nearly matching the level seen in the aftermath of the January 6 Capitol riot in 2021. Remember? The insurrection that Trump started when he refused to leave office. And on the eve of New York's mayoral election, Donald Trump issued a threat to voters by posting, "If communist candidate Zoran Mamdani wins the election for mayor of New York City, it is highly unlikely that I will be contributing federal funds other than the very minimum as required to my beloved first home," Trump said in a post on Truth Social. "I don't want to send, as president, good money after bad." The president doesn't directly determine how much money any city receives from the federal government. Appropriation is the constitutional function of Congress, well, at least it was. Control over how money is spent or withheld in acts of impoundment, which are forbidden under federal law, has become a point of increasing legal contention. Trump's post described a vote for Mamdani's fellow candidate, Republican mayoral nominee Curtis Silver, as a vote for Mamdani, and alluded to a preference for the independent candidate, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani responded publicly to Trump's remarks at a campaign event in Astoria, Queens, saying that he had known for months that Trump would support Cuomo. "In these final days," he said, "what was rumored, what was feared, has become naked and unabashed. The MAGA movement's embrace of Andrew Cuomo is reflective of Donald Trump's understanding that this would be the best mayor for him, not the best mayor for New York City, not the best mayor for New Yorkers, but the best mayor for Donald Trump and his administration. And too often we treat everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth as if it is already legal just by virtue of who is saying it." He later added, "This funding is not something that Trump is giving us here in New York City. This is something that we are in fact owed in New York." Recent polling suggests that Mamdani has at least a 10-point lead over both opponents. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.